it's one of those things where like even my buddies, like when they type up stuff, like I typed them up a whole little plan. I'm like, start here, start basic, start where you are, because the problem is you're gonna try to get caught up in what everybody else is doing. Yo, Jinx, what's
What's
up?
up?
Welcome back to another edition of Cave or Conquer podcast. I'm Tommy, and this
I'm
is.
I'm ready.
I get you every time. She's like, I'm, I'm, I don't
I'm
know.
no, it's jumping in. I jumped too early that time. Usually I'm too late, and then this
I
time
don't
was
even
too
think there's a
early.
1, 2, 3 you can do on that, but it's cool. It's all good.
So, on three or after three?
4, remember? So let's start off with our. So we got our pet peeve of the week, gym peeve of the week, and I think it's for me one of my biggest pet peeve is custodial staff at a lot of gyms. Like
No.
I feel like you don't necessarily need to have, like if you got people that come in and clean up the gym, cool. But the problem is like, so I go to Crunch and they got like these towels where they want you to spray everything now because the COVID and the sanitation and all that stuff. And it's one of those things where I'm like, damn, we ain't never got no towels. Like the spray bottles be empty half the time, and I'm like, okay, so you want to impose a standard, but you don't want to support it logistically. I don't know what's up with that.
That's fair. That's
Have
fair.
you have you ever really cared about gym cleanliness at all, or you just go in there and get after it?
Oh, yeah. Now I sweat like an absolute monster.
Mm,
Um, so I always wipe my shit off just because I feel bad for the person that goes on a
mm.
machine after I've touched it. Because yeah, I am like it turned into a waterworks. It doesn't take a whole lot of effort.
Okay, okay, yeah, I like to just clean it up out of courtesy. You know what I'm saying? They see you clean it up, somebody else might come behind and clean it up for the next person. So for me, it's kind of a value added type scenario. But that brings us to episode 6, the only approach. And so you came up with this topic, the only approach. And when you were thinking about this topic, what exactly is the only approach from your perspective?
So when I think about this, realistically, the for me the only time that you can use an only approach is in regards to doing something that is going to actually be sustainable for you. So
Mm,
you've got so many people out now. Uh, you need to train this way. You need to train more volume. You need to train 7 days a week, no rest, completely grind, like or this style, that style, or whatever. Um, how you know, and it sounds crazy, but how you know when you have a solid coach is when they come to ask you or you go to ask them for advice. Usually their first answer is going to be, well, it depends. And then they're going to
mm,
ask you a gazillion questions because the only approach that anybody can use is something that they can actually sustain and something that's actually reasonable within their lifestyle.
okay, that's realistic. And but here's the problem. So a lot of people, when people say it depends, they feel that like people are trying to finesse them. You know what I'm saying? Because like you'll go to a lot of different spaces and they're like, "Oh yeah, da 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 da." Like, how do I do this? I'm like, "Okay, what's your goal?" And then
Yeah.
people like feel like ultra challenged, and I'm like I need you to think goal and think
Yep.
strategy so we can help you get somewhere
Yep.
because you don't have a pencil or anything. What are you gonna say? Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying too is it they're gonna come at you with a well it depends and then it usually follows up with multiple other questions
Mm,
because each and every person the human body is amazing in the fact that each person is unique. So you've got basic training concepts that will apply to everything, but as far as getting into like nitty gritty details, every person's different. every body chemistry is different. People respond to nutrition different, training different. People manage stress different, have different sleep cycles, and all of that stuff plays realistically into a lifestyle change. So, yeah, when
Hmm.
someone's like, "What should I do?" It depends.
Well, that's
One,
real.
what is, yeah,
Go ahead.
what's your goal? What's your lifestyle like? What do you want to achieve? And most importantly, what is realistic and what can you stick with?
That's so true. So when so for the viewers out there that do watch this episode, it's one of those things where you want to be specific when have your goal in mind when you go seek out a personal trainer. When you seek out somebody, even just for fitness advice, like somebody will ask me, okay, what can I do to do this? What can I do to do that? You know what I'm saying? And it's one of those things where, like, even my buddies, like, when they type up stuff, like, I typed them up a whole little plan. I'm like, start here, start basic, start where you are, because the problem is you're gonna try to get caught up in what everybody else is doing. Because they're like, because a couple episodes ago we talked about how, like you were into what's his name, Ty Green, right? Is it Ty?
Kai Green. Kai.
Kai Green? Yeah, my bad. He got the
Yeah.
dreads, big swole. And I'm more of a Charles Glass, like classic type of guy. And so it's one of those things where, like, he was like, "Oh yeah, why shouldn't I follow Arnold?" And I'm like, "Dog, do you know how many years that Arnold put into that?" And I'm not saying it's not it's a bad thing to take things from Arnold, because there's a lot of mentality things that I take, but at the same time, I'm like you talked about on one of the last episodes, it's not everybody's not built to be a bodybuilder, you know, and we have to be realistic about that. But you can look great. Like, ain't nothing wrong with in some people's genetics. Like, my genetics are to a point where, if I'm being physically active and I do certain exercises, I can accentuate certain things like arms, whatever. But a lot of people, they don't even understand. They have a disconnect between, well, if you take this program, this the only way, and they get stuck in that. And then, what I found also is sports athletes. They, in high school as an athlete, they were like, yeah, deadlift this. We compete. We doing this. Go hard. I was throwing up like 585 on hex as a high schooler. And, but then I joined the Army and it made me pay for it, because you're stressing your back out. Like, you got all this, this strain on your back, and you wonder why you got back issues. But it was that football coach that was trying to motivate you to get a championship that he knew you never were going to get. So that's pretty interesting. So this brings us to our Reddit question of the day. How can I get abs, Coach Jenkins?
Oh, this is a question that everybody wants. So, what you have to realize is when it comes to losing body fat, one, you can't spot lose. So, basically, what that means is every single person is going to carry body fat a little bit different in their body.
Mm-hmm.
So, some people carry more fat in their belly, some people will carry more in their legs. Um, so, a lot of people you'll see just doing all these crunches trying to get abs to pop. Realistically, if you want abs, you need to clean up your diet for one, because they say abs are made in the kitchen, and that's 100% true. And then you need to get to a body fat level through training and nutrition that is going to allow your abs to show, and that's going to be a different spot for everybody. Because again, like I said earlier, everybody's body is a little bit different. So if you want abs, clean your diet up. Clean it up. Consistently keep it clean.
So, what are some basics that somebody can implement to clean their diet up? Say they just do the fast food meal thing, they do all that stuff. Like, if they were tomorrow, say I want to start cleaning my diet up, what can I do?
Yeah, take look at, so even baby steps. So say you're a fast food person and going to a grocery store and doing like wholesome foods is just too much of a change for you. Start looking at the menus and, maybe opt out instead of getting something that's fried. Grab something that's grilled. Go with more
Mm.
of like a chicken option. Go light on all the extra condiments. Those are all calories that will add up. So just even simple things like that, just little things that you can do just to get good habits started.
That's cool. And to the listeners, some things that I started with was like I started like boiling and baking ribs and stuff like that. Like I think a lot of times we get so funneled down into like I got to do it, go hard tomorrow. Tomorrow starts our resolution. You know what I'm saying? And that David Goggins, like take your soul mentality is amazing. But the problem is like we've got to be. David is also a realistic person. He's a realistic being. A lot of people see the go hard, can't hurt me. Who's gonna carry the boats? And you're like yeah, like I get it. Like you and I get it. Being in the military, like yeah, okay, push yourself, do a little bit. But even when we started off as ROTC cadets, and for me in basic training, it was one of those things where they wanted you to pass at 60%. You know, before you got to the 70%, before you got to the 80%. So I think we've got to, even as human beings, because I struggle with this too. Like I recently added fruit, so like I don't know. I was at the gym, or I was finishing my route, and I walk into the gas station, and I got some blueberries, and obviously gas stations don't have the most amazing, produce, but like I felt like invigorated to a point where I was like, I need to add this to my routine and to my diet, and that changed a lot for me. And so I was like, man, this is pretty awesome. So now when I shop, and here's the thing, is when it also comes down to nutrition, think about how you can lower the price. Because I don't know if you get this, like when people ask about nutrition, like what are some of the things that they say about, oh, it's too expensive, it's too pricey. How do
Yeah.
you get out of that mentality? How do you talk your clients out of that?
So, I mean, one, you can add it up. So you can add up per meal what they're spending, on
Mm,
fast food every week. And when you go through, you realize you're spending hundreds and hundreds of dollars and you're not getting a whole lot of nutritional value. And then you add in, especially if they're overweight, um, pre-diabetic, heart conditions, high blood pressure, all of that medication is stuff that could be mitigated through diet. So
mm,
you can even throw that in there and be like, you're paying, like, you might think up front you're saving money and
mhm.
maybe like in one small chunk it looks that way, but when you add up the whole entire week and compare it to what you would do like a grocery bill, just one big lump sum each week, usually you'll actually find that it's not as that much more expensive as you're thinking. The other thing too is you can go to places like Aldi's and stuff like that. Usually, like their produce is actually pretty good, and the prices
Mhm.
are reasonable. Like you don't have to go to
Yeah.
a freaking Whole Foods or Harris Teeter or whatever that's super expensive. So
Yeah, that's awesome that you mentioned that because I always shop at Aldi's. Like anytime that I go into Walmart and pick up groceries, like I beat myself over the head because I'm like, dog, you could have got this like 3 times less, what I'm saying, expensive at Aldi. And then the thing is like, one thing that helped me was even with the ribs, I would get a whole rack.
mhm.
So I would get a whole rack and I would take, I'd have 3 or 4 ribs like each day, right? So you can expand that meal out instead of having a bunch of individual meals. Because one thing I noticed was when I first started with FedEx, the boss, he wanted, how bosses want to woo you in, they want to bring you in. They're like, oh yeah, I'm gonna treat you to some McDonald's, get whatever pop you want, you know what I'm saying? You're like, oh yeah, this job is awesome. You know what I mean? And then and then you go solo and you sweat it out by yourself in that long FedEx truck moving them boxes. You're dying by the end of the day. You got sweat, dirt, dust in your eyes. It's miserable. And you're like, man, I feel like crap. And then, you realize you look at your bill and you're like, man, for breakfast, I had 3 sausage burritos. For lunch, I had, what I'm saying, the double cheeseburger boy, what I'm saying, with the large fries with the Coca-Cola. And then for dinner, I went and bought a little Caesar's pizza. You know what I'm saying? So it's one of those things where we've got to get realistic about the things that we do and actually think about them and be
Mhm.
intentional. That's the hardest part. People think it's motivation when it's actually discipline.
Yep.
And it was like, go ahead.
Yeah, it's like you said, you just gotta bite it off piece by piece. Like people need to stop with this all or nothing, you know? Yeah, get to this 90, 80%, 90%, 100% at some point. It doesn't have to be tomorrow. Just a percentage over time. Get better. 1% every day or each week. Just a little bit. And as long as
Mm-hmm.
you keep doing that and like sustain that, you're gonna be loads further than if you go full on 100% and you just burn out in 2 weeks. So,
So true, coach. So true. And it's one of those things where you got to keep your feet moving. You just keep moving forward step by step, no matter how hard it is. Because, I mean, and that's with any job, any opportunity. I find people, they quit way too early when they just needed to step a couple more times and they was going to create a habit.
yep.
It was going to be like tying their shoes to them. And they ended up walking off the job, or they ended up stop going to the gym. One major thing that I see all the time is girlfriends and stuff like that. But we'll get into that next episode, how like relationships can affect, what I'm saying, your why, and why that's important. So this wraps up for our episode 6, The Only Approach. We appreciate you guys. Hang in there.